Hello and welcome to episode 8 of the Croydon Constitutionalist podcast, bringing classical liberalism back to South London and beyond via YouTube, Stitcher and Apple Podcasts. My name is Dan Heaton and my partner in podcasting today is Mike Swaddling, the co-founder of the Croydon Constitutionalists. Well, Mike, since we last did a podcast, there's not that much that has happened, is there? What have we got to talk about today?
Lots of things today, Dan, so welcome all. First up, the EU elections, what's happened, what the results mean, what's happened locally and what they mean for the parties. Of course, what that's going to have an ongoing effect in our democracy. Talking of that, a debate for democracy that we held in Croydon back in April. Talk about that and how that went. And lastly, some surprising parking charges from the council.
Thanks, Mike. So, for our listeners, we're recording this today on Monday the 27th of May 2019, the day after the night before, as it were. So we're just getting in the European Parliamentary Election results for the UK, and the Brexit Party seems to have had a resounding victory, although some of the commentators are suggesting otherwise. Mike, what do you take on this?
So, it was a clear win for the Brexit Party. 31.6% of the vote, 28 seats, 13 seats ahead of their nearest rival. This was a party election, not a referendum. And the party, what won it, was the Brexit Party, and they won it clearly. That's very hard to get around that. Interesting, the BBC, the neutral, publicly funded broadcaster, that made me laugh, aren't spinning it that way. But yeah, a really good night for the Brexit Party. It's a party that didn't exist a couple of months ago. They stormed it. Unlike another party that didn't exist a couple of months ago, whose name I've already forgotten. They kept changing it.
Indeed. Now, Mike, hot off the press, since you last looked at those figures, Scotland has declared. So the Brexit Party actually got an MEP there, so they're on 29. So the scores on the doors, as we are, so this is without the three from Northern Ireland, obviously the different political parties for the most part in Northern Ireland, and the different electoral system for the European elections. They use single transferable vote, whereas in mainland Great Britain we use the D'Hondt system, or a variant thereof. So the Brexit Party 29, Lib Dems have got 16, Labour 10, Green 7, Conservative 4, SNP 3 and Plaid Cymru have 1. So obviously the Brexit Party by far the biggest party there, but a big bounce back from the Lib Dems. Certainly that's evident from the scores, where they've got about just over 20% of the votes, I believe. Big jump for them.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Look, the Lib Dems, and it pains me to say this, played a blinder. They put a very clear message out. It was an unpleasant message. It was an anti-democratic message. They are not a pleasant party, but they were clear and they got votes for it. And I have to say, they really showed the value of a strong local party structure. They got their vote out. They got their high turnout in Lib Dem areas. If we look locally in Sutton, the in Leave voting Sutton, the Lib Dems got 32.8% of the vote. The Lib Dems are the party in power in Sutton. They got their vote out. And that's a really impressive thing to do. It requires hard work on the streets. It requires strong, motivated activists. And that's really the big difference between them and Change UK. Change UK didn't have a local power base. They thought they could run an entire election from Westminster. And they got proved wrong, the obnoxious snobs that they are. So that's really pleasing to see. Yes, don't like the Lib Dem message, but you can't fault the effort and success they put in.
Indeed, and locally they did very well, certainly in London, and indeed in Croydon, where they're not known for doing very well. Must admit, I didn't get a leaflet from them. The only leaflets I got were Labour, UKIP and Brexit Party. Mike, there is some Lib Dem activity down in the part of Croydon where you live. Did you receive anything from them?
I don't recall receiving a Lib Dem leaflet. It's a very good point. I really don't recall receiving it, and I am in a kind of target area for them, as is Upper Norwood, South Norwood, Norbury wards. They're Crystal Palace ward, very much their target areas. So they may have done more up that end of the borough. But yes, in Croydon, 22% of the vote, really good. And I have to say, having run against a strong Lib Dem campaign in South Norwood in a by-election a couple of years ago now, they put in a really strong result. And I reiterate, I'm not a fan of their politics, but I do think they deserve a bite at some power in Croydon, a seat or two, whatever it might be. It would be really good for our council to get away from just the two parties. The Lib Dems do put a lot of work in. It would be good for Labour to have someone nipping at their heels from another angle. And hopefully this, gets them inroads into their side of the narrative, that left-wing side as a party that comes through for them. So, they done the job they could do. Just talking about the results in Croydon generally, of course, Labour won with 23.3% of the vote, and I think they really relied on a strong Croydon North vote there. Brexit Party, 21.6% of the vote. Didn't really do anything in the borough. There was a couple of events, that's about it. As you say, a leaflet to every household, but that's a leaflet, that's not meeting and greeting people, that's not a long-term campaign. They don't know who their local voters are. To get 21% of the vote is an outstanding success.
Yeah, and it was almost a three-way tie in Croydon, with the Lib Dems just splitting the difference there between Labour and the Brexit Party. So very, very close in Croydon. Obviously, the Conservative Party share of the vote completely collapsed in Croydon. Beaten by the Greens, I believe.
Beaten by the Greens. The architect of much of May's downfall is Gavin Barwell, who's always been the traditional leader of Croydon Conservatives. You've got Mario Cretura, who works for Treason 2 Referendum May. You've got Chris Philp, who works for Treason 2 Referendum May's Tory party. They're leading the way there. You've got Councillor in Crowham, whose name escapes me, who also works for the government. I call it 2 referendum. Theresa May offered a second referendum this week. The leader of the Conservatives offered a second referendum this week. These guys all work for her still, and they got 10.6% of the Croydon vote. Now, when I was a lad, all 4 constituencies in Croydon were Conservative. The Borough Council was strongly Conservative. On Thursday, they got 10.6% of the vote. And I think it's really good that the people of Croydon showed profoundly what they think of a party that has betrayed them.
No doubt. It's interesting if you look at the London results again, the London-wide results, which then decides on the MEPs for the region. Lib Dems top the poll with over 27%, Labour down to 23%, which is just unheard of, with the Brexit Party coming in just shy of 18%, and the Conservatives getting less than 8% of the vote in London, which is astonishing, and they lost all their MEPs. Bit of a shame in a way, because Syed Kamal, who was top of the list for the Conservatives, staunch Brexiteer, but nonetheless, that's what happens when your party leader, the soon-to-be departed Theresa May, when she just does not deliver on the one thing that she had to do. As you say, Mike, it's going to be interesting from specifically a Croydon perspective. Gavin Barwell, the Chief of Staff, and Mario, the prospective parliamentary candidate for Croydon Central, who is I don't know what you call it, social media czar or something.
Chief Twitterer.
Clearly, they're both going to be out of work in a few weeks when there is a new leader of the Conservative Party and therefore a new Prime Minister. So all of these things, these Brexit activities are going to have a big effect on the politics of Croydon, not just the UK.
Well, indeed, and of course, the politics of Croydon have changed quite dramatically as a result of this. We've got a new kid on the block. I think they're going to be a threat in Croydon Central. I wouldn't be feeling that pretty if I was Chris Philp in Croydon South. And the Lib Dems will know where their votes have come in, where they can focus on in Croydon North. Now, I don't think they're going to focus on... I think it's going to particularly affect Steve Reed, but it will affect some of the councillors at the northern end of the borough there, and they won't be sitting as pretty as they once were. The Lib Dems are really good at micro-focusing lots of resource. Labour councillors in that northern tip of the borough are going to be wary tonight, I suspect.
Indeed. So obviously the Labour Party and the Conservative Party have both been smashed, basically, in this election. Interesting responses. The Conservative Party certainly seemed to know that they were going to get smashed. For me to not get a leaflet from the Conservative Party is astonishing. And also, they were saying beforehand they were going to get smashed. I think a lot of their activists were just not prepared to put the effort in. Labour Party does have some people who will do any sort of activism for them. So the Conservatives kind of managed expectations in advance somewhat, although I still think they've got beaten even worse than they thought. Labour Party, though, took a bit of a kicking, especially outside of London, and indeed in Scotland. Now we've seen the results come through from there. Mike, what do you make of the response from the Labour Party, particularly the London Labour Party, to this smashing they've took across the country?
Well, just compare a couple of results there. In London, 3 Lib Dem MEPs, 2 Labour, 1 Green, and 2 Brexit. A Labour reading of that, reasonably in London, is we need to be more Remainy if we want to win forward. I look at MEPs for Yorkshire and Humber. Now that's an area that you would expect to be strongly Labour. 3 Brexit Party MEPs, including Leaves of Britain director Lucy Harris. Congratulations to Lucy. 1 Labour, 1 Lib Dem, and 1 Green. Now, an area that Labour should walk it, they've only got 1 MEP. Unfortunately, the ones in London Labour, have done what people in the Westminster bubble or the Brussels bubble are always accused of, and failed to look beyond the M25. So they've looked at the result in London and said, well, this is obvious. We need to be a Remain party. Well, what did that do for you? What did that fence sitting, what did not being a Brexit party do for you in Yorkshire and Humber and the constituencies all across the country? The Wales result is amazing. Labour own Wales. Labour bank Welsh seats as part of their election night success. They didn't win. You look around the country and Labour's just fallen away in so many areas. I hope in many ways, frankly, they become a very much a Remain party. It will set the stall out, and it will mean that they really can't win another election again, because London's big, but it's not that big. Their party it's an astonishing reading that not to understand that as hyped up as they are for Remain in the capital, people are hyped up for Brexit around the rest of Britain.
Indeed they are. And the BBC, just looking at this here, so the BBC, the way that they're presenting this, which then sort of ties into that Labour narrative, if you like, is they're not talking here about the Brexit party winning the election. They're talking here about how anti-Brexit parties received more votes than pro-Brexit parties. But to get to that figure, they have to not include the Conservative Party or the Labour Party, both of whom stood on manifestos in the 2017 general election that they would leave the European Union.
Indeed, the Conservative manifesto for the European elections said only the Conservatives can deliver Brexit. Now, many people listening to this might not think they are delivering Brexit. I certainly don't think they are. But that was their manifesto. On that basis, how can you possibly not include them in the numbers? It is just the BBC for you. They had an All Remain panel at one point during the night. I've seen a number of tweets about. They're brazen. They're not even trying to be neutral in this anymore. It's just wrong that this is a poll tax funded system for such complete bile drivel.
You won't get any argument from me, let me assure you. So finally on the European elections, because there's going to be a lot out there in the media, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of other commentators talking about this. But the Brexit Party, obviously a fantastic result given they've only been around for some 6 weeks or so. Mike, what do you think about the potential for the future, both the short term and in the medium and long term?
Well, it's an interesting one, isn't it? So, talk through a few local results for them, because if you're going to be a party, you need to have areas where you win seats. Even if we go to a proportional system at some point in the future, and we're not likely to do that anytime soon, I don't think. But if we do, you will still have areas, you will still have constituencies, and somewhere proportionality works better for you than others. So if you look at, they didn't win in Croydon, they didn't win in Sutton. They did win in Bromley. They did win in Reigate and Banstead with 35.6% of the vote. That's a storming win. But what the Brexit Party needs to do is look at those local figures and go, right, here's where we focus, here's where we don't focus. Obviously coming up first of all in Thursday week is the by-election in Peterborough. They need a good showing. They need to show they can run a ground operation. And I think they really want to try and run a big ground operation up there and make some mistakes, learn from them, know what to do next time. That's going to be the key thing, is understanding, if I was them, as much as you want to win Peterborough, and that's what you need to focus on, you actually want to come away from there with a bunch of lessons for how you're going to fight these constituencies at the next general election. And the most important thing in my mind to them now is go and get yourself organised across the country. When the next councillor resigns, and the name that I forgot earlier was Jason Cummings, one of the councillors in Croydon. Let's say, sorry, I shouldn't pick on him, but let's say a councillor, for whatever reason, decides to, go and live in the sun. When you've got a by-election, have they got a candidate lined up? Are they out early? Are they leafleting early? Do they know the hotspots in that ward? And then from that, the constituencies are here. They need to get their local knowledge up and down the country ready to do that.
Definitely, without the troops on the ground and the local knowledge, you won't succeed as a party. And that's where the Lib Dems used to be good, because they would win 1 or 2 council seats and then they'd go on and win a constituency based off that knowledge. And
just in this low turnout European elections, that's what they appear to do on Thursday as well.
Indeed. I imagine with the Peterborough by-election, it'll be, from the Brexit Party, it'll be, all hands to the pump, certainly for people from probably all over the country, really. But of course, you can afford to do that to a certain extent with a by-election. Much more difficult when you're looking at next year's local elections, and certainly a general election. My understanding is that they are looking for candidates to stand in the general election, whenever that is. But the onus will then be put upon those candidates to go to the area where they've obviously been selected for, and then to set up a local campaigning organisation. Not the normal way to go about business, but it's an interesting way to go about it, and certainly with potentially a general election in the autumn or the spring, we've not got very much time, but they've won a nationwide election after 6 weeks, so the signs are good.
Just on that, the next general election, as that pans out, and I don't know what your thinking is on this. The Conservatives elect a new leader. they either can't get through a bill, or they're blocked from getting through no deal or a new deal, in which case they maybe go in the autumn and try and get a majority, or they can get through a bill, but they alienate enough people that they can't continue to govern, and they need to go to the country next spring. That's my kind of thinking. It's very hard to see how they stumble on beyond March next year. Unfortunately, for all of those that are fed up to the back teeth of elections, it's very hard to see how they stumble on beyond March next year without some sort of general election again, unfortunately.
It does seem that way. I do not see how they can keep the DUP on side if they, go and endorse the backstop, whether that's with Labour votes or what have you. And who knows? I mean, you've got Dominic Grieve, for one, who's suggesting that if the Conservatives were to elect a Brexiteer, or certainly someone who would not take no deal off the table, that he may even vote to bring the government down. If Labour introduced a vote of no confidence, he would vote against the government. Words fail me on that, gentleman. But I think that's enough for now on the elections that we should not be talking about, because we should not have had to take part in them. But thank you, Theresa May. Thank you, Gavin Barwell. On a more helpful note, we had a debate for democracy in April, didn't we, Mike? How was that?
A fantastic night. 5 pro-Brexit parties up at the Green Dragon pub in Croydon. A great opportunity to get some parties you don't always hear from, and some views you don't always hear expressed. Local party activists putting forward their plans for a post-Brexit Britain. And that really, real street politics and people who aren't necessarily professionals at this, putting themselves out and putting themselves in front of a fiery audience.
Yeah, so we had speakers from the Democrats and Veterans Party and Neville Watson. We had Chris Mendes, the leader of the Foundation Party. We had Sean Finch from the Libertarian Party. We had Richard Plackett from the SDP. And we had Hung Wei Chia from the local branch of UKIP. Basically, they all gave a speech, and then we had a panel discussion afterwards. All of this is available on our YouTube channel, and it's definitely worth a listen. Very well attended, I thought. Yes,
a good attendance for... it was Maunday Thursday, so just before Easter. Obviously, some people had gone away already. And lots of people stayed well behind, including one lady who came along because she had never met a Brexiteer. Fair play to her. She came along to meet a bunch of us and was very respectful, asked some questions, stayed long to the end of the evening, and came on to the Skylark with us when we got kicked out the first pub. So yeah, really, really good for that, and a good diverse set of parties there. Brexit. Some damn fool on the left will tell you is a right wing activity. Well, tell that to the SDP. Richard was the former secretary of Croydon North East Labour. He's run alongside for council with a certain Sarah Jones MP when she was a young activist for Labour. The SDP is a proudly centre-left social democrat party, but also proudly British and proudly pro-Brexit. I have to say, they're the sort of party I really hope to see do well going forward. Not my politics, but I think they represent a massive constituency, effectively the constituency of Labour voters outside of the metropolitan areas of London and probably Manchester, Cambridge, those sort of areas. That's a working class Labour set of beliefs that really are completely unrepresented in politics in this country at the moment. So all the best for them. And Richard really was poised and very smart on it. Thinking through some of the other people there, Neville Watson, the Democrats and Veterans Party. Neville had a fantastic style of speaking, really held the audience when he talked, and not wishing to leave anyone out, I'll just touch briefly upon Sean Finch for the Libertarians. Definitely something perhaps I agree more with, but again, a party you don't hear from much, a party that just has a very straightforward mandate for personal liberty and freedom, and again, good to get them to Croydon to talk about that.
And you talk about the SDP and being left of centre. Well, when I was setting everything up, there was a gentleman there who he was in the audience. He wasn't speaking as such. Who was a representative from a local branch of the Green Party, who was a Green Brexiteer. So yeah, it's definitely not simply a left and right thing, as you can see within the Labour Party, and the Labour Party's traditional voter base in the North and the Midlands, who are not enamoured with the Remain-dominated Labour Party, London-based Labour Party of today.
Should maybe just continue to mention the other two parties. Chris Mendes, who many people here who listen to this will know, who ran the Croydon South Vote Leave campaign. He's setting up a party called the Foundation Party out in Kent, although they also have a councillor in Essex. Very much a street level, grassroots campaigning party. A mixture of direct democracy, Brexit, free market policies. Just interesting to see someone set up a party from scratch like that and run for it. And lastly, Hong Wei, who many of you will know, fierce local campaigner for UKIP, local branch chair, and the most local candidate, someone you will see on the streets and standing election again in Croydon. And again, good to give voice to someone that won't get a fair hearing from Croydon's media. Absolutely.
And I think we had one of the people in the audience was a chap from the Full Brexit, which is a left-leaning pro-Brexit blog, campaigning group, think tank.
Yes.
So definitely worth looking up on the older Google machine. The Full Brexit. Do look out for that. So finally for today, Mike, you've got some issues with the council and the parking permits. Do tell.
So, as many of you will be aware, over the years the council has expanded the areas that you require a parking permit for. No longer can you just park down your street. You need special permission from the council to do it. Now, partly understandably, as more people have got cars, town centres have got fuller, councils have deliberately closed car parks, councils have allowed new buildings to go up without sufficient car parking. You do need some restrictions and some respite for residents in street parking. Well, Croydon Council have come up with a brilliant new wheeze to make some more money and punish people for having the nerve to want to drive a car, which is, as they describe it, a polluter pays model. And this is about encouraging people to make more environmentally friendly journey choices. It's not so much a war on cars as it is a war on the poor. What Croydon Council are planning to do, and they've put a consultation out, is to set up a pollution-based resident parking system that will see newer cars, electric cars, less polluting cars, where residents will pay only £6.50 for a resident's parking permit, and people with older cars may well see their permit rise from £80 to £300 a year. So if you imagine you're in your terraced house, you've got a street full of parked up cars, you maybe haven't got as much money as you'd like, you're making ends meet, but you need the car for work, you don't have your own driveway because you can't afford a house like that. Don't worry, the council's just put up your resident parking permit to £300 a year. Well, thank you, Croydon. You've already got the highest paid councillors in London, or at least there or thereabouts. You've just put up 5% on the council tax, and now you want to punish the poorest people in the borough for driving. It's definitely one rule for the rich and one rule for the poor in Croydon at the moment. As you can tell, I'm not too impressed. There is, however, a chance for you to say something on this. There's a consultation. It's running at getinvolved.croydon.gov.uk. /project/566. We'll put a link up on our website. It's a really simple form. There's only one question. I would ask you to get involved and discourage Croydon Council from setting up this sort of parking permit system whereby really the poorest in the borough are getting punished for not being able to afford the latest, shiniest cars. This is almost a system whereby if you've got a private jet, we'll let you off the airline duty, but if you fly economy, boy, will we tax you. Unfortunately, I can all too readily believe that it's a Labour council doing that.
Well, I mean, it is particularly egregious because, as you say, you need a parking permit if you don't have a drive. So if you've got a driveway, you can have whatever gas guzzling vehicle you want, really, because you don't need the permit. You just park your vehicle on the drive. So it's going to particularly impact the less, well, on average, the less well-off people in the borough. So much for for the many and not the few, or some such thing, I believe.
Absolutely, for the few that can afford a brand new electric car, not for the many that can't afford a driveway.
And we won't dwell on this, but electric cars, where does the electricity come from?
I think it's from magic pixies, because that's what the Green Party and the Green Movement seems to believe.
It's astonishing. It's astonishing. Don't get me started on Scunthorpe and some such. Okay, well, if you've got any other stories about Croydon Council and the wastefulness, or in this case just downright vindictiveness, or indeed any other South London council, do please get in touch with us, and we'd love to discuss it with you and to highlight the council waste. You can contact us via the Twitter at Croydon Const, via our Facebook page, or via our website, which is croydonconstitutionalists.uk. And you can also email us at croydonconstitutionalists@gmail.com. Mike, what have we got coming up? Well, I think we're going to go and do a podcast shortly, so do please listen into that. I've got a few ideas about what we could talk about with that. I'm thinking about memories of Theresa May. Does that sound like a...
I think that sounds like a great something to start with.
So do please look out for the podcast. Mike, we've had the elections just now. What future events have we got in the pipeline?
Well, we're having other Levers of Croydon drinks soon. We need to finalise a date, but we'll let people know about that. We're keen to talk about local tax and national tax issues again. We had a real success last year with bringing the Taxpayers Alliance to Croydon, so we'll get something up and running with that. With around some form of tax or another, but we'd like to hear from you. We're getting some interviews put on the website from people, and if you're interested in being interviewed for us, if you're interested in writing for us, if you've got ideas of what a classically liberal group could do in Croydon, let us know, get involved, and we'll be only too keen to help organise it for you. Particularly if you've got something to get off your chest, we've got a website waiting for you. The articles go out to many people via email, go out via our social media. We do get people read them and comment on them and come back to us. So it would be really good chance for you to pen down 300 to 1,000 words and let us know what you think, and we'll be happy to put that forward for you.
Definitely, and we're always looking for guests for the podcast and the pubcast. So don't be shy and get in touch. So until next time, it's goodbye from me.
And goodbye from me.
Goodbye.